Construction on the $30 million Eastwood development project is underway in Lansing Township, and residents are beginning to wonder about the end product. Within the upscale apartments, office space, restaurants, and businesses will be a community known as Live, Work, Play. The idea of a community where you can live, work, and play in a single vicinity is spreading across the nation as major cities begin implementing these areas as a way to attract the younger business crowd. But as the next major Michigan community lands in Lansing, what should residents expect? Here to explain is Michigan State University professor Zachary Neal.
When it comes to planning cities or neighborhoods, there's this notion that if we can take all the different functions, all the different sorts of things that people do on a day-to-day basis and consolidate them in one area so that it makes for what some people describe as a walkable community or a mixed-use development. And so it does a couple different things. One of the big things, one of the primary social benefits is you get people seeing the same neighbors over and over, and so it builds a stronger community. It forms like social networks among the neighbors, and so they feel like they have ownership over the area. They feel safer. They feel like they belong, and they get to know one another. The other big benefit is if it's a walkable community, a place where you can get to the things you need without needing to get in the car, it can also have some health benefit. The challenge, I think, for the greater Lansing area, though, is that some of the key services are located in not walkable distance. So, for example, the grocery store. So you've got a Kroger and a Meijer in the area, but you have to drive to them. And so one of the challenges would be finding a way to provide, say, grocery services that are walkable. I'm trying to think about whether people, say, if they buy into this apartment complex, would actually be willing to walk from their apartment to Walmart. While in theory it could be a walkable distance, I think that could be a big lifestyle change. It's sort of hard to predict whether or not people will buy into it and sort of pick up on that. It's hard to make predictions for this local area, for the people that live around here, because it's not what they're used to. It's not sort of the typical development pattern we see around here. When you're building a new community that's essentially on land that was vacant before, you've got to build a lot more to really give the community everything it needs. So they've already got the shopping. The Eastwood Town Center's been there for a while. It's been doing well. You have some grocery facilities in the Walmart and the Sam's Club. But you also have to start thinking about, the parks, the schools, the libraries. And, Lansing, East Lansing, Okemos, they have those pieces of public infrastructure that, Lansing Township, essentially a field before, doesn't have. And so there's a lot more that has to go into the development before it really has everything a place needs to be self-sustaining and sort of a full-fledged community. But across the board, they describe them as luxury lifestyle units. So it's very clear that they're aiming to capture a fairly affluent, fairly well-off segment of the population, which rules out 90% of college grads who are struggling to find jobs. So it's not that that's necessarily a problem, but it's a very specific group of people they're aiming to target, and it'll produce a very specific kind of community, potentially a fairly homogenous one. People employed in professional sorts of occupations, earning a fair amount of money. Certainly if they're buying, they'll be even more expensive. If they're renting, they may be expensive apartments compared to what else is in the area, but the community may not be as stable as you see people coming and going. It might be harder to build sort of a stable community. The sort of thing that I mentioned, walkability, is aiming to produce these sort of strong, tightly knit. So one of the things you see in their discussions of these is they want it to be branded. It'll have the Eastwood Town Center brand, and they have a name for it. I think they're calling it the Heights. Yeah. Now is the most recent name I've seen. And so it becomes a very specific, sort of carefully crafted image of what they want the community to look like. And that can really play out in a couple different ways. It's possible that once the development is complete, people move in, that character changes. It turns into something other than what the developer had intended. Maybe better, maybe worse, maybe it's just something different. And so it could start to look like a community with its own sort of character. I think for folks in the Lansing area that want that sort of urban feel and don't want something that's Stepford Wives, that's branded, we have other places that they might look, say in Old Town, that has sort of a more historical character, something more unique about it, but still some some emerging retail and restaurants and things like that. So I think they're going to wind up appealing to a set of consumers that are looking for something that's brand new, new construction, relatively affluent sorts of restaurants and shopping options, and maybe that's the sort of thing they're looking for. But it's really hard to predict until you see who moves in, how long they stay, what their sorts of interests are. I think in the first couple of years we'll see a lot of sort of change and have a better sense than what the community might look like in the long run.